Hello and welcome. I'm Aiden, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this time together to step away from the rush of the day and ease into a world of dreams and wonder. Tonight, I'll tell you a story. The Christmas Tree and the Angel in Snow. A gentle tale of a little fir tree who longed for purpose, and the snow angel who helped him discover the light he carried within. But before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? And what time is it as you settle in to hear this story? We'd also love to know what kinds of stories you'd enjoy next. Your thoughts and suggestions inspire us, so please share them in the comments below. If you'd like even more from us, you can check out our Patreon, where you'll gain early access to all our stories, as well as a curated Spotify playlist to help you rest. And if these bedtime stories have been a gentle pause in your nights, subscribing is the simplest way to support us. It means the world to us, and it helps us keep this space soft and sacred for dreamers like you. Now, take a deep breath, let your shoulders relax, and allow the stillness of night to wrap around you like a soft blanket. The snow is falling, the stars are glowing, and the story is waiting. So close your eyes, settle in, and let us begin. At the edge of a quiet meadow, where the snow lay thick and unbroken, there grew a small fir tree. He was not the tallest in the forest, nor the fullest, nor the most impressive to the eye. His branches bent a little under the weight of winter's snow, and though he stood proudly, he often felt overlooked among the towering evergreens that stretched high toward the stars. Each winter, when the air turned crisp and the ground shimmered white, families would wander through the meadow searching for the perfect Christmas tree. The fir would watch with quiet hope as children laughed and pointed, their mittens tugging at their parents' hands. But the children always ran past him, their eyes catching instead on the bigger, brighter trees nearby. The fir tried to hold his branches just a little wider, to stand a little taller, but still the footsteps faded away, leaving him behind in silence. When the families disappeared into the distance, dragging their chosen trees home, he remained standing in the meadow, with only the soft blanket of snow for company. He felt small in the great stillness of winter, like a whisper drowned beneath the wind. Some nights, when the moonlight pooled silver over the field, the little fir wondered if he would always stand there, season after season, unnoticed and forgotten. His heart longed to be part of something more, to bring joy, to shine. Yet year after year, the meadow grew quiet again, and he remained a lonely fir at the edge of the snow. But beneath his roots, deep in the earth, there was a quiet patience. And though he did not yet know it, his story was only beginning. As the days drifted deeper into winter, the meadow grew stiller, wrapped in a hush that only snow can bring. The little fir stood quietly, listening to the soft sigh of the wind as it moved across the open field, carrying with it the scent of pine and frost. Each flake of snow that fell from the sky seemed to arrive with purpose, settling gently on his branches, layering him in white until he sparkled faintly beneath the moonlight. Though no footsteps came, no children's voices rang out, the fir began to notice the quiet beauty of these winter nights. He heard the delicate patter of snow sliding from higher trees, the faint hoot of an owl far in the woods, and the peaceful rhythm of silence that lingered long after. It was as though the world itself was breathing slowly, calmly, in time with the stars above. In those moments, the fir found a strange kind of comfort. He was not chosen, not decorated with ribbons or ornaments, but the snow dressed him gently all the same. He was not placed in a warm home, but he stood beneath the vast sky, crowned with stars that flickered like candles in the distance. Sometimes, when the meadow was lit with silver light, he imagined himself shining too, glowing softly against the stillness, a part of the winter's quiet song. Though his heart still longed for more, he began to understand that there was beauty even in solitude, and that perhaps the snow had chosen him in its own gentle way. One night, as the fir stood cloaked in his blanket of snow, the world felt quieter than usual. The air was crisp and still, and the stars above shone brighter than he had ever seen before. Tiny flames scattered across a canvas of deep midnight blue. The meadow was hushed, so silent that even the wind seemed to have paused to listen. The little fir looked up at the vast sky, his branches trembling lightly beneath their snowy weight. He had grown used to the calm of winter, but something in the air tonight felt different. It was as though the stars themselves leaned closer, whispering secrets he could not yet understand. Then, from the farthest point of the heavens, he noticed a shimmer unlike the others. It began faint, a soft glimmer, no brighter than a single candle. But slowly, it grew stronger, swelling like the rising of the moon. The light descended gently, weaving between the stars, until it seemed to separate itself from the night sky. The fir gasped, or rather, if a tree could gasp, it did so with the creak of its branches. For the light was not a star at all, but a figure, draped in white as delicate as frost, wings unfurled like sheets of snow caught in the wind. She descended with grace so effortless it seemed she was part of the falling snow itself. She landed in the meadow without a sound. Snowflakes sparkled around her, drawn to her presence, as if eager to dance upon her shining form. Her eyes held the reflection of the stars, and her smile was as soft as the glow of the moon on fresh snow. The little fir felt his branches quiver. He had been visited before by birds, by owls who perched upon him, even by deer brushing past his trunk. But never had he seen a being such as this. She was not of the earth. He could feel it. She was made of sky and frost and light. The angel looked at him with kindness, tilting her head slightly as though she had been searching for him all along. For a moment, she said nothing, and the fir wondered if he was dreaming. But then, in a voice as gentle as falling snow, she spoke. "You have been waiting," she said softly, her words wrapping around him like a warm blanket against the cold. "And though you feel small and unseen, know that even the quietest places hold great purpose." The fir's branches trembled again, though this time not from the chill of winter. He longed to ask what she meant, longed to tell her how he had waited, year after year, for someone to notice him. But he was only a tree, rooted in place, with no words to speak. The angel, as if hearing his unspoken thoughts, reached out her hand and let her fingers brush lightly against his snowy branches. "Do not fear your stillness," she whispered. "There will come a night when your light is needed, and when that time arrives, you will not stand alone." Her words lingered in the air, sinking into his bark, deep into his roots, until they settled in him like the warmth of a hidden ember. The fir did not know what she meant, or when such a night would come. But for the first time in all his winters, he did not feel forgotten. The angel smiled once more, and then, as swiftly as she had arrived, she began to rise again, drifting back into the snowy night sky. The fir watched her ascend until she was no more than a faint shimmer among the stars. Alone once again in the meadow, the little fir stood in silence. Yet now, the silence felt different, no longer heavy with loneliness, but gentle, like a promise carried on the hush of falling snow. The meadow lay quiet after the angel's departure, but for the little fir tree, the world had changed. Where once he had stood in stillness without purpose, now a warmth pulsed through his branches and roots. He thought of her words often, words that had brushed against him like the gentlest snowfall. "There will come a night when your light is needed." Days slipped by, marked by the rise and fall of the winter sun. The fir stood patiently, watching as the snow piled deeper around his trunk. The meadow sparkled in silver under the moonlight, and during the day, the snow shone as though tiny diamonds had been scattered across its surface. And yet, beneath all the beauty, the fir carried a question he could not answer. What light could he possibly give? He was only a small tree, unnoticed by villagers, overshadowed by the taller pines. Still, her promise lingered, humming softly inside him like a hidden flame. He began to notice things he had never truly seen before. The way the snow on his branches reflected the faint glow of stars, casting tiny glimmers across the meadow. The way his needles caught the wind and whispered in a low, soothing rustle. The way the moon sometimes seemed to choose him, shining directly on his crown, as if testing how much light he could hold. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in purples and silvers, the angel returned. Her glow appeared first as a shimmer on the horizon, then as a soft figure drifting down from the stars, wings unfolding like a snowfall in slow motion. This time, the fir did not tremble with fear or doubt. Instead, he felt anticipation, as though he had been waiting for her return since the moment she left. She landed beside him once again, her feet leaving no trace in the snow. Her eyes reflected the fading light of day, and her presence seemed to quiet even the air, as though the whole meadow bowed to her arrival. "You are patient," she said gently, her voice carrying like a song through the stillness. "And patience is a gift not many cherish. But patience is what keeps hope alive, even when nothing seems to change." The fir longed to tell her that patience was not always easy, that waiting in the shadow of taller trees brought him sorrow. Yet even without words, she seemed to understand. The angel lifted her hand again, brushing the tips of his branches where the snow clung like delicate lace. "You ask yourself how a tree could ever bring light," she continued softly. "But you forget. Light does not always mean fire or flame. Sometimes light is hope. Sometimes it is comfort. Sometimes it is simply a glow that leads others home." The fir felt her words sink into him, wrapping around the questions he held inside. He thought of the families who had passed him by, searching for their perfect tree. He thought of the children laughing as they pulled sleds through the meadow. Could it be, perhaps, that one day he would not be passed over, but sought after? Not for his size or beauty, but for the quiet light he had yet to share. The angel seemed to see the thought forming within him, for her smile widened. "There will come a night," she said again, "when the meadow will not be empty, when voices will fill the air, and your branches will carry the glow of more than just snow. That night, little one, you will not be overlooked. You will stand as you were always meant to, tall in heart, steady in spirit, and full of light." The fir felt his branches quiver with something close to joy. Though he could not speak, he wished to hold on to her words forever, to let them root within him as surely as his trunk was rooted in the earth. The angel stepped back, her wings spreading wide, sending a hush of frost shimmering across the meadow. "Do not rush the days," she said, her voice tender as a lullaby. "Every moment of stillness prepares you for what is to come. When the time arrives, you will know, and I will be here, watching, ready to stand with you." With that, she rose once more, lifting into the sky with a grace that made her appear as though she were simply another snowflake rising with the wind. The fir followed her, until her glow melted back into the stars, until once again he stood alone in the meadow. But this time, the meadow did not feel empty. The silence was no longer heavy, for it carried her promise within it. He could feel it in every snowflake that touched his branches, in every gust of winter air that wrapped around him. The angel's words had become a part of him, an ember burning gently, waiting for the day it would become a flame. And so, the little fir tree stood taller, not because he had grown, but because he carried hope. The frost shimmered upon his branches like jewels. The stars watched over him like guardians, and in his heart, he held the angel's promise that his moment would come, and when it did, the light he gave would shine far brighter than he could ever imagine. Beyond the meadow where the little fir tree stood, there was a village nestled against the edge of the forest. It was a place of warm hearths and cheerful laughter, especially in the days leading up to Christmas. Every window usually glowed with candlelight. Every street was dressed with ribbons and wreaths, and the air rang with the sound of carols sung by children as snowflakes drifted through the air. The little fir could not see the village clearly from his place in the meadow, but he often heard faint echoes of its joy carried to him by the wind. Those echoes filled him with a wistful longing, for he imagined the delight of families gathering together, their homes alive with warmth and cheer. But on one particular Christmas Eve, something strange happened. The sky had been heavy all day with storm clouds, dark and brooding, blotting out the cheerful shimmer of the winter sun. By late afternoon, the first rumble of thunder shook the sky, unusual for such a season. The snow began to fall faster, thick flakes that whirled chaotically in the wind. Then came the sudden crack of lightning, a flash that lit the horizon like fire before plunging it back into gloom. The storm had arrived, wild and unrelenting. The fir tree stood steady as the wind howled around him, bending his branches and rattling the snow loose in small cascades. The meadow was soon cloaked in swirling white, and even the strong, towering pines in the distance swayed under the storm's weight. But it was not just the forest that felt the storm's force. The village, too, was struck. One by one, the windows that had glowed with golden light flickered and went dark. The lanterns on the streets sputtered, extinguished by the wind. The bells that were meant to ring on Christmas Eve fell silent, and the air that was usually filled with carols and laughter grew still and heavy. The storm had torn down wires and doused fires, leaving the little village in sudden darkness. Children huddled close to their parents in dim rooms, their wide eyes reflecting the shadows. Without lights, the decorations that had brought so much joy now seemed like faint outlines in the gloom. The wreaths on doors hung lifeless, the candles unlit, and the sparkling garlands lay dull in the dark. It was as though Christmas itself had been swallowed by the storm. The villagers tried to keep their spirits high, Mothers lit what few candles remained, their small flames flickering weakly against the cold drafts that slipped through the shutters. Fathers reassured their families, their voices soft but uncertain, and yet there was no denying the sadness that lingered. How will Christmas come if there are no lights? One child whispered, his voice trembling as he clutched his blanket. Another asked, how will Father Christmas find us in the dark? The storm raged outside, the wind howling as if mocking their worries. Snow piled high on rooftops, covering chimneys, and drifted against doors. The village, once a place of brightness and song, was swallowed in a silence so deep that even the usual bells of the church tower did not chime. For the first time in years, Christmas Eve felt empty. A night without joy. A night where even the stars were hidden behind a curtain of clouds. Out in the meadow, the little fir tree felt the darkness too. Though the storm had not broken him, he could sense the villagers' sorrow carried on the wind, as though the hush of their hearts had spread across the land. He stood in the snow, small and unremarkable, and yet he longed more than ever to help. He thought of the angel's promise, her words echoing like a song in his bark. There will come a night when your light is needed. Could this be that night? The fir wondered. His branches quivered under the weight of snow as though stirred by some invisible call. The storm still roared, but the quiet ache in the air felt louder. The ache of children waiting for light, for joy, for something to remind them that Christmas was not lost. The little fir tree did not yet know how he could answer such a call. But deep inside, the ember of the angel's promise glowed brighter. Something was stirring within him, something waiting to awaken. For though the village lay in darkness, the night was not finished, and neither was his story. The storm pressed on into the night, relentless and cold. Snowflakes swirled in wild circles, carried by gusts of wind that seemed determined to bury the meadow in silence. The little fir tree stood steadfast, his branches heavy beneath the weight of ice and snow. But inside him, something stirred. It was not fear, nor despair, but a quiet sense of waiting. The angel's words returned to him, curling around his thoughts like a lullaby. There will come a night when your light is needed. The village lay hidden in darkness, no glow from windows reaching the meadow, no lanterns to pierce the shadows. The fir could not see them, but he could feel them, their sadness drifting into the cold, the echo of children's soft voices, wondering if Christmas had slipped away forever. The meadow, which was usually a place of peace, now felt like a threshold between sorrow and hope, and the little fir stood at its heart, longing to do something, though he knew not what. And then, through the storm's fury, a familiar shimmer appeared. It was faint at first, no brighter than the glow of a single star pressing through heavy clouds. But the fir recognized it immediately. His branches quivered, his needles rustled in anticipation. The angel had returned. She descended slowly, her wings glowing softly against the dark. Snow seemed drawn to her as she passed, not falling in chaos now, but drifting gently around her like a veil of diamonds. She touched down beside the fir with the same grace as before, her eyes alight with calm, as though the storm dared not touch her. "You have waited long," she said, her voice steady, though the wind howled around them. Each word seemed to carry warmth, cutting through the bitter chill that pressed against the meadow. "And now, little one, the time I promised has come." The fir felt her words ripple through him. He thought of the village in darkness, of the children waiting for light, and of his own smallness. He wished to believe, but doubt clung to him like frost. "How can I bring light when I have none?" he thought, though he could not speak it aloud. The angel stepped closer, her hand brushing against his snow-laden branches. Where her touch lingered, the snowflakes shimmered, glowing faintly as though lit from within. "You are stronger than you believe," she whispered. "The snow upon your branches carries more than cold. It carries the reflection of the stars, the glow of the heavens. You were not overlooked, little tree. You were placed here, in this meadow, so you might become what others could not." Her words sank deep into him, melting the doubt that clung to his heart. The fir began to notice the snow resting upon his branches, how each flake seemed to tremble with light, as if waiting to awaken. The angel lifted her hand to the crown of his head, and her voice lowered to a tender murmur, almost like a secret. "Close your heart to fear, and open it to hope. Let the stillness you have carried all these winters become your strength. The world does not need a tall tree tonight, nor the brightest. It needs one who has learned patience, who knows silence, and who can hold light not just for himself, but for others. That one is you." The fir felt something ignite within him, a warmth spreading from his roots to the tips of his snow-covered branches. It was not fire, not flame, but a glow, steady and calm, born from her whisper and the promise she had planted within him long ago. The angel's wings spread wide, catching the storm's fury, and yet around her there was peace. Her gaze softened as she looked upon him, and her final words were like a thread tying his heart to hers. "Shine now, little one. Shine not for yourself, but for those who wander in the dark. Be the light they seek, and you will never stand alone again." She stepped back, her figure glowing brighter against the storm. The fir felt the warmth within him surge, spreading outwards until the snow on his branches began to sparkle. One by one, each flake lit up like a tiny lantern, until his entire body shimmered with a gentle, radiant glow. The meadow around him brightened, the darkness broken not by fire or flame, but by the quiet, patient light of a small fir tree who had waited all his life for this moment. The angel's smile lingered as she rose once more into the storm, her form dissolving into the swirling snow, but her whisper remained in his branches, echoing softly like a song that would never fade. You were made for this night. And so, though the storm raged on, the meadow was no longer swallowed by shadow. At its heart stood the little fir tree, glowing gently in the frost, ready to guide the weary eyes of the village to a light that would not falter. The glow began softly, a trembling shimmer along the fir tree's branches. At first, it seemed as though the snow itself had awakened, each flake pulsing with a gentle light, like tiny lanterns scattered through his needles. The fir felt the warmth of it rising within him, not hot or burning, but steady, like the calm of a hearth on a quiet winter night. The angel's whisper lingered in his being, guiding him, reminding him that this light was not for himself, but for others. The storm still raged, the wind howling across the meadow, but within the circle of his glow, there was peace. The snow no longer seemed so heavy on his branches. Instead, it became a crown of light, 1,000 sparkles radiating outward into the night. His trunk, once dark and unremarkable, now shimmered faintly, as though the glow had seeped into his very bark. Each needle glistened like a tiny star. The fir could feel the light spread farther, casting long beams across the meadow. The ground, blanketed in white, reflected it upward, doubling the brilliance until it seemed as though the entire clearing had become a lantern in the storm. The dark silhouettes of nearby trees, tall and solemn, were now outlined by his glow, their shadows softened. The meadow no longer felt lonely. It felt alive, touched by a magic that was quiet but undeniable. And then something miraculous happened. At the crown of his head, where his highest branch reached skyward, the angel appeared once more. She did not descend this time, but revealed herself as though she had been waiting within him all along. Her form glowed brighter than before, her wings unfolding in a cascade of silver light. She perched gracefully at his top, her presence turning the small fir into something far more. A beacon crowned with a star. Her wings arched outward, and the light from his branches met the radiance of her glow, blending together until it seemed the night sky itself had bent down to rest upon him. Snowflakes drifting through the air caught the light, scattering it like glittering jewels across the meadow. The storm could no longer hide the beauty of the night. The fir stood straighter than ever, not because he had grown taller, but because something within him had awakened fully. He remembered all the years he had stood in silence, overlooked by families who passed him by. He remembered the quiet longing he had carried, wishing to shine, wishing to belong. Now he understood. He had been waiting for this moment, when his light could serve not himself, but all those searching in the darkness. The angel spoke, her voice soft but strong, carried on the wind so that it seemed to echo through every drifting snowflake. Your patience has borne fruit. Your silence has become strength. Tonight, you are not the forgotten tree. Tonight, you are the light that guides. The fir glowed brighter, his branches trembling with a joy he had never known. He no longer felt small or unseen. He felt whole. The meadow around him shone with radiance so pure and gentle that even the storm seemed to hesitate, its fury muted by the calm presence of the tree's light. Far off in the distance, the first signs of movement stirred. Through the swirling snow, faint figures could be seen, lanterns held in trembling hands, their flames dim and weak against the wind. The villagers, drawn by the glow, had begun to notice the change in the night. Families who had sat in their darkened homes, worried that Christmas would be lost, now lifted their heads. Through the windows they saw it, the distant glimmer rising above the snow, brighter than any lantern, steadier than any fire. One by one, they stepped out into the storm, their boots crunching through drifts, their eyes fixed on the glow. Children pointed with wide eyes, their sadness forgotten in wonder. Parents carried the youngest in their arms, whispering reassurances that perhaps Christmas had not been taken from them after all. The storm no longer frightened them, for ahead there was light, gentle, inviting, constant. The little fir tree felt their approach even before he could see them clearly. His glow seemed to reach out, guiding their steps through the snow, lighting a path across the meadow. And as the villagers drew nearer, he stood steady, his branches lifted proudly, his crown adorned with the angel's shimmering wings. The darkness of the village was behind them now, and before them shone the heart of hope, a small tree that had waited all its life to be seen, now radiant with purpose. And though he could not speak, his light told them all they needed to know, that Christmas was not lost, that joy could still be found, and that even in the deepest night, light would always return. The glow of the little fir tree spread far across the snow, reaching the edge of the village like a beacon in the night. At first, only a few noticed it. A child peered from a frosted window and tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing excitedly toward the meadow. Soon, whispers rippled through the darkened homes. There was light in the distance, steady and bright, unlike the flicker of a candle. Families bundled themselves in coats and scarves, curiosity mingling with hope as they stepped into the storm. The snow was still falling, heavy and restless, but the glow of the fir tree reached out through the whirling flakes like a guiding star. Parents clasped their children's mittened hands. Elders leaned on walking sticks, and neighbors called softly to one another as they followed the light. Boots crunched through drifts. Breath rose in small clouds against the cold air. But the people did not turn back. The glow filled them with warmth, drawing them closer step by step. The little fir tree felt their approach before he saw them. His glow pulsed stronger, reaching eagerly across the meadow as though welcoming them. The angel, perched at his crown, spread her wings wider, casting a gentle silver radiance that mingled with the golden shimmer of the glowing snowflakes resting on his branches. Together, they lit the night with a brilliance that no storm could overcome. At last, the first of the villagers stepped into the meadow. Their eyes widened, and they stopped in their tracks, marveling at the sight before them. The children gasped, pointing with joy, their earlier fears forgotten. "Look," they whispered, "a Christmas tree glowing in the snow." More villagers gathered, forming a circle around the tree. Their faces, once dimmed with worry, now shone in the light that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. The children danced in the snow, their laughter ringing out like bells. Parents and grandparents stood close together, their voices soft with wonder. The storm continued to swirl, but here in the meadow, no one minded its chill. The light of the fir tree was enough to chase away the night's cold sorrow. The little fir felt their presence deep within him. For years, he had been overlooked, passed by, left to stand in solitude. Now, all eyes were upon him, not in judgment of his size or shape, but in awe of the light he carried. For the first time, he did not feel small. He did not feel forgotten. He felt whole, as though the purpose he had longed for was finally fulfilled. The angel's voice carried gently through the gathering, though only the fir seemed to hear her words. "See how they come, drawn to the glow you give. It is not grandeur that binds hearts together, but light in the darkness. Tonight, you are their star." One by one, the villagers began to sing. The carols that had been silenced in their homes now rose into the air, carried on voices warmed by wonder. Soft at first, the melody grew stronger, echoing across the meadow and weaving with the sound of the storm, until it seemed as though even the snow danced to their song. The children twirled around the glowing tree, their laughter like chimes. Some villagers bowed their heads in prayer, grateful for the miracle before them. Others clasped hands, their eyes shining with tears that were not of sorrow, but of joy. The fir tree's glow touched each face, and in its light, they saw one another not as separate homes or weary travelers, but as one family gathered beneath the watchful wings of the angel above. The fir tree's heart swelled with quiet joy. He had always dreamed of being chosen, of standing in a home filled with warmth. Yet now he understood. He was chosen for something greater. He was not meant to stand in one family's corner. He was meant to stand for them all, to bring light when darkness had taken hold, to gather every heart into one circle of hope. The villagers lingered long in the meadow, their songs rising, their spirits lifted. And as they sang beneath his glowing branches, the little fir stood tall, radiant and unshaken, no longer the lonely tree at the meadow's edge, but the center of Christmas itself. The villagers stood in awe around the glowing fir tree, their faces warmed by his light even as the storm swirled around them. The angel at his crown shone steadily, her wings casting silver rays across the snow. Yet it was the tree himself who seemed to hold their eyes. His branches, once humble and overlooked, now glittered with thousands of snowflakes turned into lanterns. The air was alive with wonder, and the meadow, once a place of solitude, now rang with song, laughter, and prayer. The fir tree absorbed it all, the voices, the warmth, the joy flowing through the night. And for the first time in his life, he felt not only noticed, but needed. For years, he had longed to be chosen, to be cut down and carried into someone's home, adorned with ribbons, ornaments, and lights. He had believed that was the only way to have purpose, the only way to belong. Yet here he stood, rooted in the earth, glowing brighter than any decorated tree could. And suddenly, he understood. This was the hidden truth, one that had been waiting for him all along. He had not been passed over out of pity or forgotten by accident. He had remained because his place was here, in the meadow, where his light could reach not one family, but an entire village. He was never meant to leave the soil where he had grown. His purpose was not to shine for a few within the walls of a single home, but to become the heart that gathered all together beneath the open sky. The angel looked down at him, her smile tender, as though she felt the shift in his heart. "Do you see now?" she whispered, her voice soft, yet carrying clearly through the wind. "Your waiting was not in vain. You were not overlooked, but preserved. The place where you stand is not small. It is the very center of what was always meant to be." The fir's branches trembled with understanding. The years of loneliness, of watching others carried away while he remained behind, now seemed different. He realized he had not been rejected, but kept, as though the earth itself knew his moment would come when the village most needed light. Around him, the villagers continued to gather, their circle growing larger as more families emerged from the darkness, guided by his glow. They carried lanterns dim with weak flames, but soon extinguished them, for his radiance was more than enough. The children gazed upward in wonder, their eyes wide as they pointed to the angel shining at his crown. "A star!" one child cried, clapping mittened hands. Another whispered, "The tree has its own angel." The parents smiled, tears glistening in their eyes as they pulled their children close. For many, the storm had stolen their sense of celebration. But standing here in the glow of the Little Fir, they felt something stronger than the absence of light. They felt unity, warmth, and hope returning to their hearts. The meadow had become their sanctuary, the tree their symbol, the angel their promise. The fir drank in every moment, and the hidden truth bloomed fully within him. His destiny was not to be chosen and carried away. It was to remain rooted, to be the steady light that drew people together when darkness fell. His stillness was not weakness. It was strength. His patience was not wasted. It was preparation. Every year he had waited, every snowfall he had endured, had shaped him for this very night. The villagers began to sing once more, their voices rising higher, carried by the storm as if proclaiming to the skies that Christmas had not been lost. The melodies wrapped around the fir like a cloak, and he glowed even brighter, his branches shimmering with joy. The angel above him raised her hands, her wings spreading wide, and the light intensified until it seemed as though the stars themselves had descended to bless the meadow. The storm, though fierce, could not touch the peace that had settled here. And within that peace, the fir tree knew the deepest truth of all. He had not been meant to shine alone, but to awaken the light within others. His glow was only the beginning. The true radiance came from the hearts gathered around him, warmed by hope, united in song, bound by the spirit of Christmas. The little fir tree was no longer lonely. He was no longer waiting. He was exactly where he was meant to be, carrying out the purpose that had always been his, to be the light in the darkest night, the heart of Christmas for all who sought it. The meadow was still, though the storm had not yet passed. Snow fell gently now, no longer in wild flurries, but in soft, drifting flakes that settled lightly upon the villagers' shoulders and hats. Their circle around the fir tree had grown tighter, their voices stronger as they sang, their faces glowing in the light he cast. The angel's presence crowned him with radiance. Her wings, shimmering like frost, turned to flame, and together they bathed the night in warmth. The little fir tree felt it deep within his roots. The night had transformed him. No longer was he the overlooked sapling, left behind as families chose taller, fuller trees. No longer was he the lonely watcher of the meadow, yearning for purpose. He was now the heart of Christmas, not because of ornaments or garlands, but because his light, patient and steady, had drawn the village together when they most needed hope. The villagers stood in awe, their worries forgotten, their fears dissolved. The children, their cheeks flushed red from the cold, danced in small circles around him, their laughter ringing like bells. Parents and grandparents held hands, some whispering prayers of gratitude, others simply watching in silence, as though afraid to disturb the sacred glow that filled the air. For each of them, the fir tree was no longer just a tree. He was a sign that even in the darkest winter, light could still be found. The angel looked down from her place at his crown, her voice carrying softly through the night. "You have fulfilled the promise," she said, her tone tender, filled with pride. "You have become what you were always meant to be, not the tallest tree, nor the grandest, but the one that shines when all else is dark. And so long as you stand, this light shall never leave you." The fir tree felt her blessing sink into him, filling every branch and needle with strength. His glow did not waver, though the wind pressed against him. Instead, it grew steadier, like the flame of an eternal candle, never flickering, never fading. He realized then that this gift was not only for one night, it was forever. Every Christmas Eve, he would shine again, a beacon for the village, a promise that hope would always return. The villagers, sensing the sacredness of the moment, lifted their voices one last time in song. Their carol rose into the sky, mingling with the angel's light, and for a moment, it felt as though the stars themselves leaned closer to listen. The meadow became a cathedral, its roof the heavens, its altar the little glowing fir. Even the storm, humbled, fell quiet. When the last notes of the carol faded, silence settled once more. But it was not the heavy silence of loneliness the fir had known for so long. It was a silence filled with peace, with the steady breath of people joined together, their hearts beating in unison beneath his glow. He had given them light, and in return, they had given him belonging. The children were the first to whisper what all were thinking: "This will be our Christmas tree forever." Heads nodded around the circle, and smiles spread as the villagers understood the truth. They did not need to cut him down, nor decorate him with fragile ornaments. He was already perfect, standing tall in the meadow with the angel upon his crown. Each year, they would return to him, not as individuals, but as a community, bound by the memory of this night when a small tree saved Christmas with his light. As the villagers began their walk back to the village, guided now by hearts lifted with joy, the little fir remained, glowing steadily in the snow. He did not feel sorrow as they departed, for he knew they would return. He had become a part of them, and they a part of him. His meadow was no longer empty, for it carried the echo of their songs, the warmth of their gathering, the promise of their return. The angel stayed a little longer, her glow bright and serene. She leaned down, her voice soft and sure. Remember this, little one. You are not alone, and you never were. Your patience was your strength, your stillness, your gift. Now, you are more than a tree. You are their star, their eternal light. With that, she spread her wings, lifting gracefully into the heavens, her radiance becoming one with the starlit sky. The fir tree watched her rise, his heart at peace. Above him, the stars twinkled brightly, as though welcoming her back, and below, his own glow remained, steady and calm. Snow continued to fall, blanketing the meadow, but it no longer felt cold. It felt sacred, alive with warmth. And so, the little fir stood in his place, no longer the forgotten tree at the meadow's edge, but the eternal star of Christmas, a light that would never fade, a promise that would guide generations to come. And each Christmas Eve, as villagers returned with laughter and song, they would gather around him once more, and the meadow would shine again, filled with hearts bound by love, by hope, and by the gentle radiance of the tree who had waited for his moment to shine.